Many people only know Glenn Greenwald as a journalist, and while he is, in my opinion, one of the best journalists of my lifetime, he is much more than that. I am Dr. John Padfield. I am a business professor and a former Indiana state representative, and this is Business Reform, where we discuss issues at the intersection of business, technology, and society. This video is part 6 in my On Privacy series, which examines what prominent people have said about privacy over the years. Up to this point, all the defenders of privacy I have discussed have been historic figures, such as 2 Supreme Court justices who collectively served from 1916 through 1975. However, in this video, I want to talk about a current champion of privacy who is currently at the peak of his professional game, Glenn Greenwald. I admire Glenn Greenwald as a principled man who, while practicing law as a civil rights attorney, performed pro bono work even for people he vehemently disagreed with, including a white supremacist Glenn believed was wrongfully imprisoned. Glenn explained, quote, "To me, it's a heroic attribute to be so committed to a principle that you apply it not when it's easy, not when it supports your position, not when it protects people like you, but when it defends and protects people you hate." I have to respect anyone with that attitude and that level of commitment to their principles. Glenn is also an author who has written 6 books, including his 2006 book entitled How Would a Patriot Act? Defending American Values from a President Run Amok, and his 2007 book entitled A Tragic Legacy: How a Good versus Evil Mentality Destroyed the Bush Presidency. Glenn also wrote a 2011 book entitled With Liberty and Justice for Some: How the Law is Used to Destroy Equality and Protect the Powerful. And my personal favorite, his 2014 book, No Place to Hide: Edward Snowden, the NSA, and the U.S. Surveillance State. Glenn was one of just 3 journalists Edward Snowden trusted when he became a whistleblower on the NSA's unconstitutional surveillance programs in 2013. No Place to Hide went on to spend 6 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list in June and July 2014. For more than a decade, Glenn Greenwald has been writing and talking about privacy, so it was very challenging to select just a few of his great quotes to share with you in this video. Let's start with this one. "The way things are supposed to work is that we're supposed to know virtually everything about what they, the government, do. That's why they are called public servants. They're supposed to know virtually nothing about what we do. That's why we're called private individuals." Glenn also said, "Democracy requires accountability and consent of the governed, which is only possible if citizens know what is being done in their name." I believe the signers of the Declaration of Independence would refer to that truth as being self-evident. How could we consent to levels of surveillance we don't even know about? Glenn also wrote, "No matter the specific techniques involved, historically mass surveillance has had several constant attributes. Initially, it is always the country's dissidents and marginalized who bear the brunt of the surveillance, leading those who support the government or who are merely apathetic to mistakenly believe they are immune." In discussing the importance of privacy, Glenn wrote, "Above even our physical well-being, a central value is keeping the state out of our private realm, our persons, houses, papers, and effects, as the Fourth Amendment puts it. We do so precisely because that realm is the crucible where so many of the attributes typically associated with the quality of life, creativity, exploration, and intimacy." I could literally spend hours quoting Glenn Greenwald from his writings, but I would really prefer for you to hear him in his own voice. The clip I am about to play is from a TED Talk Glenn gave in October 2014, shortly after No Place to Hide was published. The talk is entitled Why Privacy Matters, and in this 2-minute clip, he talks about how mass surveillance creates a prison of the mind.
This realization was exploited most powerfully for pragmatic ends by the 18th century philosopher Jeremy Bentham, who set out to resolve an important problem ushered in by the industrial age, where for the first time institutions had become so large and centralized that they were no longer able to monitor and therefore control each one of their individual members. And the solution that he devised was an architectural design originally intended to be implemented in prisons that he called the panopticon. The primary attribute of which was the construction of an enormous tower in the center of the institution, where whoever controlled the institution could at any moment watch any of the inmates, although they couldn't watch all of them at all times. And crucial to this design was that the inmates could not actually see into the panopticon, into the tower, and so they never knew if they were being watched or even when. And what made him so excited about this discovery was that that would mean that the prisoners would have to assume that they were being watched at any given moment, which would be the ultimate enforcer for obedience and compliance. The 20th century French philosopher Michel Foucault realized that that model could be used not just for prisons, but for every institution that seeks to control human behavior: schools, hospitals, factories, workplaces. And what he said was that this mindset, this framework discovered by Bentham, was the key means of societal control for modern Western societies, which no longer need the overt weapons of tyranny, punishing or imprisoning or killing dissidents, or legally compelling loyalty to a particular party, because mass surveillance creates a prison in the mind that is a much more subtle, though much more effective means of fostering compliance with social norms or with social orthodoxy, much more effective than brute force could ever be.
I put a link to the whole TED Talk in the description of this video, and I encourage you to watch the entire 15-minute talk. I want to leave you with one final quote from No Place to Hide, but it isn't a quote from Glenn. It is from another champion of privacy who risked his life to tell the world about illegal surveillance programs. The true measurement of a person's worth isn't what they say they believe in, but what they do in defense of those beliefs. If you're not acting on your beliefs, then they probably aren't real. Those words were uttered by Edward Snowden himself. I will soon be starting a new series of privacy videos focused on countermeasures, what you can do to start reclaiming your privacy. Spoiler alert, there is no quick fix, there's no silver bullet for you to reclaim your privacy, but what I'm going to be sharing are some techniques and tips that you can use to start that process to limit the amount of data being gathered on you. As Edmund Burke once put it, nobody ever made a greater mistake than he who did nothing because he could only do a little. If you have any questions or tips on privacy, please leave them in the comment section. I enjoy reading those, and I will do my best to respond to them either in the comments section or possibly in a future video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and subscribe, and as always, thank you for watching.